This is Gemara Chulin, Daf Kuf Yud Tes. And we're holding on Kuf Yud Ches and Beis. We are 7 lines from the bottom. First word on line is Shayish Talshu as we continue the somewhat difficult halachas of Tumah V'Taira, of Yadais, and Shemer Lepri. And although learn this month, the month of Elul, has been generously sponsored by a close friend of the Daf, as a schos aliyas neshama of Aster Rייזל Basar Meir b'siyata d'Shemayo. The incredible Koyach HaTorah should continue elevating the Heilige Neshama of Aster Rייזל Basar Meir higher and higher in Gan Eden Shel Milo. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav, Ein Yad Lepachas Mekizayis, halachis of a Yad Oichel is that it is no such din as a Yad if it's less than a Kazayis. In order for a Yad to be considered, for a Meichel, for a food to be considered a Yad, it has to be at least a Kazayis. If it's less than a Kazayis, it's not significant, it will not be considered a Yad. Vein Shoimer, Lepachais Mikpol, and a Shoimer Lepri has to be at least a large bean. Rav Yechon Amar, Yesh Yad Lepachas Mekazayis. Yesh Shoimer Lepachas Mikpol. Rav Yechon says it can even be smaller. Meisvei asked the Gemara, there's going to be a kasha on both the Rav and the Rav Yechanan. We're going to start, as you'll see in a moment, as a kasha on Rav, and then eventually we'll ask on Rav Yechanan. So right now we're asking on Rav, who says that the din of a yad is a kazayis, the din of a shomer is a kfol. Meisvei asked the Gemara 4 lines from the bottom. There are two bones of a mace, and there are two half zaitim, two half olive amounts of basar, of flesh. And he brought the ends hashniyim lebayis, shniyim or habeis. He brought the other ends of the bones, which have no flesh, into the house. We have two bones, chatzi zayis basar, and the other end, without any basar, he brings inside. V'habayis ma'ala aleim, and we know that what happens when you're inside, the oyel, the roof of the house, is on top of them. What's the halacha? Says the Bryce of Abayis tamei, and there's tumah inside the house. Yehuda ben Yokosia Imer Mishum of Yaakov. How can the two bones combine to a kazais? Now, end of Rice. Says the Gemara as we turn over to Kafir Testament Aleph. Now, according to Rav, how does he learn this brisa? Meaning, whichever way Rav is going to twist this brisa, it's going to be a kasha on him. Says the Gemara, V'Rav b'mayokimla. Ibiyad kasha reisha. Ibishomer kasha seifa. If it's a yad, then the reisha of the Tanakhama is going to be difficult. That he says it's tamei, even though it's less than a kazayis. And if the Bryce is discussing a shomer, then the sefer that Yudan Nikusia is going to say it's going to be tar. It's going to be difficult. And if it's a shomer, then it's a half a kazayis. But Rav held that once it's a kapul, once it's a bean, which is smaller than half a kazayis, is going to be tamei. So explains the Gemara, we can explain the Brisa according to Rav either way. He had spoken about a yad, and he told it like Yehuda ben Nikosia, who says it's going to be tar. Why it's going to be tar? Because it's not a kazayis. Meaning, the kasha was, if it's a yad, it's shver to the Tanakam. If it's a shomer, it's shver to Yehuda ben Nikosia. Says the word, no problem. Rav will either say it's a yad, like the second opinion, or a shomer, like the first opinion. For Rav Yechanan Amar, how's Rav Yechanan going to learn now? Kula b'yad v'udam k'tanakama. The whole thing is talking about a yad, and Rav Yechanan is going to say like the Tanakama that there's going to be a din of a yad less than a kizais. Tashema continues the Gemara with another kasha. 8 lines out. The first one is Rav Yechanan. Rav Yehuda says Rav Yehuda kulit. if we have a thigh bone, sheesh alein kazayis basar, that has a kazayis basar. Goyreres kula letoma. Says the Brisa, the flesh makes the entire bone fit for tama. Acheir maimer. Afilu ina lea lekpol. Even if there's no more meat on there than I could pull than a bean, Goyreres kula letoma causes the whole thing to be tummy. According to Rav, how's he going to learn it? Ibiyad kasha seifa ibashemer kasha reisha. Says the Gemara, similar teretz. Ibaysim biyad v'udamar kaviyuda ibaysim b'shemer ka'acherim. Rav Yechon amar nacham al kula b'shemer v'udamar ka'acherim. And Rav Yechon is going to say that he holds like the acher. Fragtibar acherim hakapol kamri. How can you say that the acherim say it has to have at least a kapol, at least a b in order to be tamid? Rav Yechon said, excuse me, that even if it's less than that, answers the Gemara. He also said a shiur, but lemaisa the acherim don't actually hold of that shiur, which of course is a little bit difficult to understand. I mean, the Gemara is about to bring a raya, but if you don't hold of a shear, why would you say a shear? Now, okay. Amar Rava, says Rava, Deika Nami de B'Shemer Askina. Says Rava, I'll bring you a raya that we're dealing with a shemer. The Katani kulis. Remember, what was the case of this brisa? A unique case of a kulis, of a thigh bone, which generally has marrow inside the bone. So Shema Mina, says Gemara, that's the raya that we're not actually dealing with, that we're dealing with the shemer, from the fact that the type of bone, the type of cut, the type of beef, the thigh bone that we're discussing, it makes sense. They're talking about a shemer le pri, because the fact talking about a kulis. Says the Gemara, tomorrow let's go a little bit deeper into the shita of the acherim. Rav Chanina Amar Zehu Shir, says Rav Chanina, the kulis, the bean is a small amount that makes it a shemer like the acherim. Rav Yechon Amar Ein Zeh Shir, no, it's not. Ein Zeh Shir, Hakatani Kapol. The Brisa said Akpol. I did the same territory you saw before. It's Kapatani Kam Shir, Inunami Shiura, but it doesn't really mean the actual shir. Tashema Nocha Kashom. Rav Elazar ben Azariah mitaher basar pool. Rav Elazar ben Azariah said it's tar a large bean, even when it contains the amount of a pole. Mitame b'shal kitniyes. It makes it tame if it's a small bean. Mipmei, why? Sharaitza b'shamshimin. The reason is because the owner wants the mishamshimin. He wants the sharbitim, and he doesn't want the bean inside to be touched. So what do we see? Says the Gemara. We see even a very, very small quantity is going to suffice to be considered a shemer, which clearly is not like Rav, who said there's going to be no shemer unless it's at least the size of a kipol, the size of a large bean. Explains the Gemara. We're dealing with not the case of the pod, but with the stem. And the reason is because it's a yad le'oichalach. Yad. Ubemai mishamshin. What does the Raisi mishamshin? Bitashmishin, that it serves the other item. Tashema, one last kasha on Rav. 4 lines to the bottom. The Tanu de Rav Yishmael. Al kol zera zorua, says the Vasik. Any seed of a seed plant, the sheyizara that is planted. Kider shemnei adam see and chita b'kli basa. Just like you find wheat in its husk, kusura b'kli basa, and barley in its husk. Vadashin beklipasam, and lentils in their husks. So what do we see? This is where we learn out the din of a shemer, that it combines for the requisite amount of tama. What do we see? We see already at the size of a lentil, clearly smaller than I could pull than a large beam, is going to be tama. Says the Gemara, Beria Shiny, which is a yisai that we know many places, that a complete entity, that is a different thing. Meaning, Even though Rav said until you have a sense of can pull a large beam, there's no tama, but if it's a complete entity, there will be. By Rav Oishia, ask the Gemara as we turn over to Kufyates, Amebeis. Shnei Shemrim Aushet Starfnu. What's halach with two Shem combining to be the requisite share to give off Tama? Heichi Dami, says the Gemara, what's the case? If the case one on top of the other, they're both protecting one food. Is there such a thing? Of course they don't combine. We have three layers of an onion. Panimi is the inner one. Kedura, the inner one, whether it's intact or whether it has holes, mitzarefes, combines emsais the middle one shlema. If it's complete mitzarefes, kedura, ein mitzarefes, and then the outer one chiton benkach, it's going to be tahira. So what do we see? We see that one shimer on top of the shimer doesn't do anything. The whole purpose of the shimer is that it guards. So I have one on top of the other one. The top one's not doing anything. So what was Rav Aishia Shiloh? Answers the Gemara. Rav Aishia Shimer oichal shacholku kamibayile. He's answered a shimer that divided into two parts. So only protects on one part of the food. Kiva the hayloi magin ahai v'hayloi magin ahai. Do we say that since this part does not protect on that part and that part does not protect on this part, therefore they're separate? Shaimrim loy mitzdarf and oitoma. No, so they're both guarding the same item. Kiva the hay magin adidei mitzdarf and the yes combine. So do we have two halves combining or not? Says the Gemara. Tashima. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah Mitar b'shal pol mitam b'shal kidneys. Menei sharaitze b'shmishin. Because we don't want it to be touched. So what do we see? We see from here that each sharbin individually is not the requisite amount. Rabbi ben Azariah clearly means that they're going to combine to be the requisite amount. So we see that two shaymims will combine. No, talking about the stem, as we've seen, so we do not have an answer to our shayla whether two shaymims combine. Tashema, the Tanadver Rabbi Yishmael, Al Kol Zerazaru Asher Yizara Kedersh Bnei Adam, Moitzi El Izri Achita Bikli Basa, Usaira Bikli Basa, Vadasha Bikli Basa, Kida, that each one goes in its husk, in its shell. What do we see over here? Clearly, we see the shells, the kernels are going to combine. So clearly, the shaimim do combine. And says the Gemara, no, doing with the stem, and so because the yad letama, hachanan b'shidra, umishim shaimer, we're talking about the spine, the whole ear of grain, and because it is a shaimer. Says Gemara, 1 second. Beshlama elita, excuse me. Srich litata, that's what one needs the bottom one. Altitai, my lilata. So what's going on over here? Chadara, says the Gemara, we're talking about kernels on one row of the corn. So they collectively are going to really be one shaymer. Each one is really dependent upon it, is independent on its own. And the Raiza shows us that they will combine to equal the requisite beya amount. Something doesn't make sense over here. In one row of kernels of corn, we're going to have a kebeya amount. Says we're doing with the wheat, not corn. Like the times of Shimon Shatach, tremendous ears of corn. He says, Kamara, if you're talking about such a crazy case, we can even say it with one single wheat kernel. Kufa, says the Gemara. Let's go back. We started off today. 2 bones to have zaytim of basar, and you bring in the other ends without any basar. Shneim labayis abayis ma'aleim abayis tama yudim in a kosi oimer mishem of Yaakov. Hersha etzamis mitzarmeli gzayis. How to do them combine to gzayis? I'm Reish Lakish Shanu Allah etzem the havayat. Says Reish Lakish about the etzem. The bone of a yad is a yad. Aval nima, but if we're talking about a strand of hair, then lo of a yad, if there's going to be a hair attached to the flesh, then it's going to remain tahor. Rav Yochanan Amar on the first one, if you nima, nami have a yad, even that's going to be a yad. So machlokes Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish, How do we view this case of Shnei Chatzi Zaitim on this bone? And how does it serve a Yalid Tuma when the house is Ma'alil Aleim? Eitzi, Rav Yechon Rish Lakish, of this we're going to conclude. Or, Sheish Alav Kezayis Basar. We have high that has a Kezayis of Basar on it. Hanagea Bitziv Hayotzi Mimenu. Touches a piece of meat that comes from it. Ubisayra Shekineg Dai Tame. We see that even the Saira, even the Nima, is going to be Tame. Lo Mishum Shaimer, says Mar no Raya. Umiko Shaimer Gabi Shaimer, like our previous Sugya. Chalchule Mechalchel, the here pierces and goes to other sides. So it's not a Shaimer Al Gabi Shaimer, so two different sides of the hide. Master Avachal Bar Yaakov, Elameyat Tfilin, Hechikosvi, no, Nabin Ksiva Tama. We need to be a perfect writing, and it's not. Why? Because they're all going to have hairs on it. And if we're learning that the hairs are going to be a shaymer, so how are you going to be writing in tefillin? They forgot that which they said in the West. Any hole with ink passes over it, ain't no nekev. So it might have this microscopic teeny little hair piece that's not going to bother us. Or I can tell you the entire mission deals with tuma of a yat. Kedamar avaloi b'miloi shebein amalayim, the bristle amongst the bristles hachanami b'nima shebein anim, and therefore it's not going to be concern of us a hair amongst the hairs. And where do we see this din of Ravaloi? Aha, the following brisa: Meloi shebemayim mitamin mitaman ve'ina mitzarfim meloi lemai chazi. What is a single bristle fit? Am Ravaloi b'meloi shebein amalayim. So it's not really one bristle amongst the others, but since each one is independent on itself, each and every one is considered part of the yad. Part of the yad. Stop over here. We'll say it's a different lasha the next year. Siyata de Shmaya.